In this video, I'll show you how you can use invisible tokens to create light sources, to tint maps, and to track invisible creatures on the battlefield. So to start out, we're going to create the invisible token. And for that, you're going to need a transparent ping file. I've got a link to one down in the description of the video. I've already uploaded one into my library here. I'm just going to drag it onto my screen. And I'm going to click on it. There it is. Now the thing is, we want these tokens to be invisible to our players, not necessarily to us as DMs. So I'm going to double click on the token here, and I'm going to give it a 0-foot aura. And I'll make it a little bit darker here, just so that I know where this token is. All right, with that done, what we're going to do now is create a character sheet for this token, because we want this token to be able to be just dropped out of our library whenever we need one. So I'm just going to call this token, for right now, I'll call it info, and I will use the selected token here. And of course you can't see it because it's invisible, and we'll click Save Changes. Okay, and that's it for the setup process. Now we can start using this token in a variety of different ways. So let's start out with looking at invisible tokens as light sources. So right now, here's my map, which currently has no light sources. I've got my fighter on the map here. And if I look at this from the fighter's perspective, he is completely in the dark right now. So let's give him some light. I'm going to go back to my journal here. I'm going to grab that info token that we just created. I'm just going to drag it right onto the map. You can see it's kept its aura setting, so I can easily see where it is. And now I'm just going to double click on it, go to the Advanced tab, and I'm going to give it, say, 10 feet of light. And we'll make it so that all players can see that light. Click Save Changes. And now our fighter can see the light, but they can't see the token that it's being emitted from. So this way you don't need to have like a special image of a torch or a lantern or something if you're just trying to drop light into a dungeon. Now, building on that, if we want to be able to drop light sources in every time without having to manually tweak the light setting, what we can do is create a character sheet just for the light source. So what I'll do is I'll open up my info character sheet here. I'll say edit, and I'll duplicate it. All right, so I now have a copy of info, and I'm just going to open that one up, and we'll change that one so that it is called light source. And we're going to remove the default token, because the default token that's currently there is the one that doesn't have light. It's the version of the token that we initially created, but this new one that we've modified has the light coming off of it. That hasn't been saved to the info character sheet. So the info character sheet right now has the original properties of that token, which wasn't emitting light. I want light source to have the light, so I'm going to say use selected token for this now. Again, you don't see it. Save Changes. And now I can drag light sources onto the map wherever I want, and you can see it illuminates accordingly. And then I can move these around as I need to. It's easy for me to pick out where they are, but my fighter doesn't see the sources of the light. So now let's look at using invisible tokens to dim the map. So right now my fighter is in the middle of a forest, and it looks like it's a pretty bright day. If I look at it from his perspective, yep, nice and bright. But let's say that in game time, he's arrived at this forest at night. Well, what I can do then is use an invisible token to dim the map down. I'm going to grab our token that we created earlier, pop it onto the map, double click on it, and I'm going to give it an aura big enough to cover the entire map. We'll say 100 feet here. We'll make it a square, and we'll make the aura black. Then we'll go to Advanced and make sure that all players can see that aura. Click Save Changes, and now we can see it's gotten darker. Now I can layer multiple tokens like this if I want to make it even darker. So I'm just going to press Control-C on my keyboard here to copy that token and paste it. So there we go. Now I have two of them, and you can see it's gotten even darker. So you can really achieve some nice ambiance with these tokens. In fact, you can even change them a little bit if you want to go for like a fog effect rather than darkness. You could change the color of the aura like that, and now it looks foggy. And again, the player can't see the token that is causing this effect. It's just right there on the token layer, hidden, invisible, but ready and easy to access for us as DMs. Now, we can do the same thing that we did before with the light source. We can create a darkness token or a fog token if we want to. So if you are going to be doing this regularly, you could just create a character sheet for this, call it something like, fog, use the selected token, and now I'll delete this, and now we could drag fog on whenever we want. So the final thing we'll do is look at how to track the position of an invisible creature using an invisible token. So right now my fighter is in combat with this drow, and the drow is going to turn invisible. Now normally what you'd do here is you'd right click on the token, you'd say send it to the GM layer, and now that token is effectively off the board if you look at it from the fighter's perspective. But as the GM, I now have to remember to switch to the GM info layer so that I can move this token around, and then I have to switch back if I want to manipulate another token. And if I do have a series of tokens that are in play, if I've got, a small squadron of drow that are fighting here, it's going to be a pain for me to have to switch back and forth between the two layers. So using the invisible token trick, we'll be able to track the position of our drow from the token layer. So here's how to do that. First thing I'm going to do is put my drow back on the token layer, and we'll put him back where he was a minute ago. And there's two ways to approach this trick. The first way is by using Fog of War. So I'm going to go up to my page toolbar, find the page that my characters are going to be on, and I'll enable Fog of War. Now when I do that, as you can see, it's blacked out the whole screen. What I want to do now is zoom way out, and I'm going to use the reveal tool to expose all but a tiny portion of the map. I'm basically getting everything but this last row of squares on my grid. So if I go back to the fighter's perspective, everything's back. It's just now we've got a little bit less of the map visible. So I'll zoom back in as the DM. And now what I'm going to do is when my drow turns invisible, I'm just going to move him into this blacked out area and pull an info token on and use that as like a placeholder for the drow. So if my drow's going to sneak around my fighter here and try and backstab him, well, I can track his location, but he's not there anywhere on the screen for my fighter. And then if my fighter makes a blind, wild swing and manages to hit the drow is still here on the token layer, and I can say, yeah, he got him for 9 points of damage, and that can still be tracked, but now I don't need to worry about switching between layers or anything in order to make that happen. So an alternate approach to this would be to create a multi-sided token, where one side of the token would have the drow's picture and the other side would have our transparent ping file that we used earlier. So to set that up, I'll begin by removing Fog of War here. And then I'm going to go over to the Collections tab, and I'm going to create a new rollable table. And I'll call this Invisible Drow. And we will add an item to that. And the first item that we're going to add will be the drow image. And I've got that in my library here. I'll just drag that on. And then the other item will be the invisible image, which is our transparent PNG. There we go. Save changes. Okay. So now we'll save that. And I'm going to delete my original drow token. I'll go back to my collections tab here. I've got my invisible drow. There it is. I'm going to say token. That puts it on the map. And now what I'm going to do is just double click on this guy. I'm going to say it represents my drow, whose name is Jarlazon. So I can, put his HP and all that stuff in there. But now when I want him to turn invisible, I can just right-click on him and say choose side, flip to the other side, and now he's gone. Now, this is why we had the auras turned on with our original info token. So I'm just going to double-click on this guy again and give him a 0-foot aura just so that I can keep track of him. But now I can move him around. I don't need to worry about fog of war or anything like that. And if I need to make him visible again, I can just go back, choose side, flip that over, and now I stay on the same layer the whole time. I'm not dragging extra tokens around or anything like that. So, hope you found this helpful. Thanks a lot for watching.